Afternoon, Tim. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Shabbar. I'm well. How are you?
I'm very excited for what is potentially episode 5 of
Okay.
the maybe soon to be called The Problem of Money podcast. Still toying with that, but
hmm
I like the sound of it.
I think you said that last week, so it's
Yeah,
great.
I
It's
like
great. Us.
it's growing on me.
Yeah.
We've come quite a reasonable way since we've sort of started these talks about the problem of money, which we introduced back in episode 1 with the Jacob Needleman quote, which we might reference again. And we've spoken at length about how there are these sort of money movements
hmm
that we often gravitate towards, which is either the individual that sees all of the good things that money can bring to their life, and therefore they're sort of going after a number in the pursuit of these good things that they believe that money will bring to them. We looked at the polar opposite, which were people who believe that maybe money isn't great, maybe it's the root of all evil, could be the stance that a few people take, or the belief that they hold, and therefore they're sort of pushing money away. And then when last week we spoke about caught between the two. And so we've arrived at this place now where I'm thinking, okay, where do we go with these conversations? And a lot of things that come up with me and my clients are around, money giving this sense of freedom, or money brings security, or money gives me back time, money brings happiness, or more money means I'm going to be less fearful about the future or less anxious. So I get these sort of themes. I'm wondering whether today we dive into these, but in usual conversations with us, I might bring something and you might sort of turn around and say, oh no, I don't think we should go there quite yet because we're diving in too deep. So you tell me, where should we head with this?
Let's do a little, not so much a recap. I want to respond to what you already said within a recap of this idea, and then I think, yeah, we can start to look at an overarching way about thinking about money and life. And from there, then I think whether it's this session or probably next session, then we can dive into what clients are saying about security or status or time. We could maybe look at issues. So I think maybe one more step, just generally looking at some of the funny ways, because of these different movements and these unconscious untanglements, these funny ways people start to think about actually their life and their money. Yeah.
Sounds good.
I suppose Your Money or Your Life is another title for this podcast, but I think that might be taken. I have in the past done workshops called Your Money or Your Life. So yeah, I think when you just introduced it just now, you said all the good things money can get you, right? Your clients. The key thing we are saying here, we're not being stupid about money in this approach. We're not saying with money, of course, I can afford to go to a nice restaurant. Or of course, if I have money, I can buy a more expensive holiday. Of course, we're not being stupid and saying that's not true. But what we're saying is what gets entangled is a human experience. So if I have fun, that's my experience. If I have security, I feel secure, right? Or if I feel insecure, these are all human experiences deep down. And what we're saying is not that money can't buy you nice things or posher furniture or a bigger house. We're saying, yeah, but actually when you look, those things don't necessarily give you the human experience you want. So you might have the nicest sofas in the world and the biggest car, but you might not actually feel successful or secure. So a lot of what we're doing in this work, I think we said at the beginning, this is work that comes from a guy called Peter Koenig. Maybe we'll do a whole podcast on him and his story, maybe even invite him one day. That would be great. But this whole piece that Peter created, and I've trained with Peter, and now I'm developing and you're developing, is saying we need to notice the disconnect between the money number and the human experience. And those are the things that most of the time people just assume, with a bigger number, I get to feel successful. Or, as you said, sometimes our entanglements are negative judgments. With a bigger number, that means I'm a greedy capitalist pig and I'm unworthy of, being spiritual. All of those are human experiences that any of us can have. And what we're saying is they don't tie up with the number automatically. And most people think they do. So yeah, when you said the good things, money doesn't actually buy you human experiences. It might buy you just nice meals, and that may give you experience, but I'm sure we've all had the experience of being at a nice restaurant and feeling miserable, or feeling ill, or feeling disconnected from the people we were with, or feeling out of place, or, you know what I mean? And we've all had the experience of having a meager, little picnic or a meal deal on the steps of some station and just somehow feeling very, very happy in that moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that, and I'm sure people have. There is this idea that yes, as you spend more, the quality of the experience,
Yeah.
increases. I love staying at nice places, and the feeling that you get when you're in a very nice resort and all of that sort of stuff. That would be something interesting to just dive into to what's going on there, because I think there's some status stuff going on within that piece of work. The thing when we did some work and that broke that sort of correlation, was the fact that I identified situations where I had spent a lot of money for an experience, and I can think of a holiday, and if you're not there with the right person, it doesn't guarantee you the quality of the experience. And so you could be in the best place in the world with the nicest resort, the most pampering, but you can still have a not a pleasant experience based on the people that you're with. And I think that we've all been in situations like that. So,
it may be the people you're with. It may be your mind.
Yeah.
It may be your mind. In the end, it's our mind, our awareness, that had experiences.
Yeah.
And it's our thinking mind that interprets. And maybe, I think it was William Shakespeare, Hamlet, said, I could be bounded in a nutshell and consider myself, I think it was king or prince of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams, right?
Right.
So again, in these conversations, we're not being stupid about money,
Yeah.
and we're not being against money. We're not saying all things being equal, having money is very nice. And all things being equal, if that's your thing, spending money on nice things or nice hotels, of course, that's pleasurable, or certainly can be. We're just saying that this modern assumption that comes from us, from society and peers and conditioning, that the bigger the number, somehow I get more rich experience, happiness, contentment, success. We really need to be very, very skeptical, or we need to examine that. Because in the end, it's my mind, and a whole host of factors go into how I'm able to appreciate or be aware or experience whatever I experience. So let's get into it. That will take us, maybe we get more philosophical in another podcast. So yes, what you then said, it's our belief that money gives us all these things. And I think that's more accurate. We have an unconscious association, or I say entanglement. We don't know we're doing it. In my work, I found it goes very, very deep between certain human experiences we want, status, freedom, etc., and a number, money. And some people also have certain human experiences like my unfairness or my greed or my corruption, which are also parts of being human, that they tangle up with money. And the main point is we don't know we're doing it, so it's unconscious. And as long as I don't know I'm doing it, I will relate to money as if it's true that it is X, Y, or Z. So I think it would be great, probably not today, let's dive into actual things that clients are saying or struggling with, or things that you've struggled with. If anyone's listening to this, they can message us or email us, or however that's going to work. It's really good to think, how does the rubber hit the road with this stuff? Because in the end, it is practical, it's not philosophical. But we need to set a few ideas first, because this is a different way of thinking about money. Although I would invite anyone listening to really think about it this way and think, is the experience in the money? Whenever, as you say, whenever I've been in a posh restaurant, and maybe it's been wonderful, but maybe I went another time and it was miserable. And maybe there was another time I just shared a packet of crisps somewhere and it was just a kind of beautiful moment, or I felt very free, or whatever. Okay, the experience is in us and our awareness. It's not actually in the number. And there's a lot of the world that will try and persuade you that it's in the number. Now, where does that lead us? I think this is maybe the topic for today. That leads us within this work into, you might think of it as two gravitational centers for our lives. or two main kind of things that people could focus life around. And this, again, this is a phrase from Peter Koenig. He talks about a money path and a life path. And simply put, as long as I'm kind of thinking or unconsciously tying up all of these human qualities, some of which I want, some of which I never want, but I think it's all connected with money, I'm kind of really focused on my money path, right? So your money path is everything you do to earn money, get money, save money, invest money, but also how you spend money or don't spend money. And for some people, it might also be how you avoid money or push money away, or don't even like to think about money, but it's got a charge. So sort of everything I do that has a little bit of a charge with money is my money path. And your life path, and this is a great question for anyone, you know, I often ask this on workshops and stuff, is if it weren't for money and you knew money would always be fine, it's always going to be okay, what is it you'd really love to do with your life? Or another way of saying it is, if you could really kind of maybe relax and tune in and listen to your body or your heart or trust your dreams, what would you really love your life to be about? Brackets, if it weren't for this pressure of money that we've talked about, the problem of money. Because lots and lots of people don't feel they can even ask that second question because it seems so obvious to them. Well, you know, don't be stupid. I have to sort out money first. And we'll dive into different ways trying people do that. So the life path is, yeah, if it weren't for the problem of money or the pressure of money, or you just having to grapple with money, what would you love to do? And I'll just say one more thing about that. I can see you've got a question. Sometimes life path might feel like quite a big step. So some people say, you know, I've had people I've worked with, I always wanted to do charity work in Africa, very specific vision. I've had people on my workshops who, when they were 7, they showed me a picture they drew when they were 7 of doing medical work in Africa, right? And this is an English woman. That's like a very strong childhood vision. And they'd gone off to train in medical work and they were running hospitals in the UK and very developed, very, very successful. But they'd never quite done the thing in their vision. So that might be a life path step. Other people, they really want to leave a job and go freelance. But for some people, life path might be, I just love painting, but I don't want to be a painter, but I wouldn't mind working less and spending more time painting. Or others, it might be just, I want to be more present for my children. Or for others, it's like, I don't really know deep down what I love. I just know the job's exhausting me. And what I really need in my life as a next step is just to have more time and space where I'm not consumed by work and the money path so that I can tune in. So life path can be big or small, but the difference is on my life path, if that's my center, I make listening out and trusting what is the next step for me. I bring that into the center of my awareness and try my best to follow it. Whereas what many of us have been trained to do is think, I can't do that until I've sorted out money, whatever that means. So maybe today we could have a chat about money path, life path as almost like two stories in society or two possibilities. And the more we're tangled up with all of these unconscious ideas about money, probably the more we're just triggered by and caught up in the money path. And we think we have to be, but we don't really.
Fascinating. There was 2 things that I wanted to sort of bring up. First was how you approached if it weren't for money, what would you be doing? You know, what would you like to do? And just being aware of that. As sort of an aha moment, one of the questions that I use with my financial planning clients is an attempt to sort of find out from people what their life path is. And I've just realized, but it's entangled with the money path, because my question to my clients is, assuming you've got unlimited funds or, you know, a huge amount of money, what would you like to do? You know, how would you spend your time? You know, what would you do on a day-to-day basis? What are your goals? What are your dreams? And that question now just appears very misleading because you've just tied it to the money path. So is it an authentic life path sort of a question? Because it's like, well, actually, no, I'm asking you, what can you do if you've only got enough money that you don't need to financially worry? That is a big thing. I need to sort of go away and unpack that. But that's really insightful for
no,
me.
let's stay with this bit. That's really interesting because you've made a few links. One is you're thinking people with loads of money don't have to worry. Did you know you just said that?
Yeah.
That's not true. Humans worry, and some humans are more anxious than others. And sometimes that's to do with a money number, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes there are people whose numbers are big and they're full of anxiety about their money and full of anxiety about other things. So they still don't do what they really want to do. And other times there might be people with a smaller number, but they're relatively free from anxiety. And they take more risks, they go for stuff. So yeah, I think it's interesting. Your question to your clients, in some ways, it's a really good question because it's asking what do you really want. But what you're doing is you're still tying it to a money path belief, which is with a large number,
you can do what you want. Yeah.
You get to do what, and if your number is low, you don't get to do what you want. And what we're saying is that might be a good question for an IFA. I don't know, but it is still a money path centered. It's still it's repeating the prevailing logic, which isn't logical, but that's what we think, which is with a big number, wow, now you really get to be life-centered.
Yeah.
But don't think it's true for most people, with or without a big number.
Yeah. And I guess it's obviously just coming from my profession, which is all about growing your number. That seems like a good question to ask because you want people to grow their number and then use that money to support whatever it is that they want to do. But it's also very misleading because actually it's tying up this, I'm going to call it an unconscious belief, because I even got the second thing was I got triggered when you said about the painting. And I was like, internally, I just felt like, freaking hell, you just, to go and paint and, you've got to take time off work, but you've got to support yourself. And I'm thinking way ahead. And it's like, okay, hold on here, So the conditioning, I think, is very deep around this idea that, you take care of the money first and then you go and follow and do what you want to do. Yeah. And that feels
it's deep conditioning.
Deep conditioning and quite toxic.
Again, great to notice it. So first you notice you had a kind of strong judgment or resistance to that. And I'm sure people listening to this will have those things. And maybe we actually write this down. We should do a future podcast on what do I do if I notice a kind of strong resistance or judgment about this podcast about money, because that becomes really important. I'm actually going to write that down. So you noticed it, which is great. Because as soon as I notice that, I can get curious about it. And if I'm curious about it, I have the possibility of questioning my money-centered story about how things work. Until I'm curious about it, I just go, oh my God, a couple of middle-aged, privileged guys waffling on about money and painting, and I bet they're not worried about the bills, right? Maybe we are middle-aged and privileged and waffling on. But the point is, if I just go with that judgment, I just assume my current money story is correct, whatever it is. So I think we'll do another podcast about what I call detective work. But coming back to that, you said, it is deep-rooted, this conditioning. And this is why I wanted to talk today about money path and life path, because I think the fundamental story, which we all interpret differently and live out differently according to our situation and our culture and our education and our opportunities, right? We're not saying it is equal for everybody. But the meta pattern, the kind of shared narrative is, for the vast majority, some version of Shabbar, sort out your money, get your money okay, get your number okay, money path, money path, money path. Because once it is okay, whatever the hell that means to you, then you can do your life. Then you can paint or spend time with your kids or write the novel or just relax or meditate more or go do charity work or whatever it is you want to do or take a risk. And that is, I call it the modern industrial money story. That is a story with deep roots. It has, I mean, this is another podcast, actually. We could say the roots of this story, right? But if I summarize, baked into that, sort your money first out, is a whole load of stuff about a certain Protestant work ethic, that life's not there to be enjoyed. We have to earn and deserve our living, that we're all individuals, and somehow the world or universe isn't a place that would support us. That what you can measure and count, i.e. money, is more real than what you can't count, i.e. a feeling of being alive or joyful. There's a whole load of hundreds of years of kind of Western industrial philosophy and history baked into that, right? So no wonder it feels real, and no wonder when someone listens to this, if you don't catch it, you go, oh, this is a load of rubbish. What I'm suggesting is this is deep stuff, but actually we can play with it in quite a fun way and maybe start to live we don't have to do a philosophy degree or be a revolutionary to start to unpick some of that. We could actually just go, well, what would I love to do more of or differently if I knew money would be okay? And then we can work with both the fear and resistance that comes up, or maybe we just try and do it and see what happens. Yeah, so it can be provocative.
Yeah, definitely can. And even just when you said the whole sort your money thing out, charity came up in that sort of example. And literally, I come across quite a few clients who, once I've got X number in the bank, then I'm going to turn my attention to doing charity work. And that's, I mean, it's still very noble to want to go and do that work, etc. But it's like, yeah, it's almost like, it's always like either or. It's like a, binary, make the money first, then go and do the noble good work.
Yeah.
And it's great to have that intention, but it's like, okay, where's the middle ground, or where's the crossover, or does there even need to be a crossover between money and life, or can it just be doing your money path and doing your life path?
These are all great questions, right? Or I would say, which one goes at the center and which one might still be important and will have some attention, but which one's at the center? Because what we put at the center, everything else has to sort of configure around it. And what too many of us do, most of us, without realizing it, and certainly without questioning it, is we go, well, yeah, you put money at the center. That doesn't mean you're totally focused on money, but it's almost like, well, obviously I need to, sort out my money, my savings, my mortgage, my pensions for my children, we create this sort of artifice of money. I'm not sure that's the right word, but we create this thing at the middle. And then we think, oh, yeah, and life has to organize around me having to sort out money. So we say, later I'll do my charity work. Or maybe I can just do one evening a month, or, all these other things that are very important don't get to be at the center. What we're saying is, with money and life, is that's a choice. It is a choice that most of society and most of our upbringing tells us we should do. And then we wonder why, we're depressed, or we don't have meaningful lives, or we just don't feel alive. It's because we're not putting life at the center. Right? So we wake up one day and we go, my numbers are okay or not okay or whatever, but I don't feel vital. I don't feel alive. I don't feel I'm doing what I'm here to do. Well, yeah, because you were trained and you agreed to put something else at the center of your life apart from life. And the only other option is say, well, what would I put at the center, and how can money in some way, flow and support that? But if we come back to your client who says, yeah, I'm going to earn the money or get the money and then I'll do the charity work, the question I would ask within this work is, what is it that charity work would give you? What do you think they'd say? So if you did, how would you feel, or what would be the experience if you were doing charity work? What might they say?
Well, a sense of giving back, giving to something, a cause greater than your own. I've had conversations with clients where it almost feels like a sort of conditioning that if I've made a lot of money, now it's my turn. Now it's my turn to give back and support and the underprivileged, almost like a moral obligation around having made the money and then having to do the charity. For a lot of people, I think they recognize that it's just a feel-good factor. Being charitable feels good. I haven't met anyone that's done a lot of charity and not felt good within themselves. So these are sort of themes that on a few conversations that I've had.
Maybe we will dive into specific things about time and security and maybe charity. The thing I'd always be looking for is whatever it is I think in the future I will do or experience because of my money, how do I recognize that's something I'm not experiencing now? And how might I bring that more into my life now? Because you said, it's often either or. People are very either or with money or life. I would say they are. That's true. And the other thing we often are is we put life into the future. So we say, well, now, of course, I can't do this, that, or the other. Of course, I can't do loads of charity. Of course, I can't do my painting, or I can't even take time off. I can't rest. I can't really see my friends, whatever it is. But in the future, brackets, when the number is okay, I'll get to do those things. So very often with the money path, what we do is we focus on the number now, and now might be decades of our life. And then we project all the things that we really want life to be about into the future. When I have the money, I will, whatever, I'll get to be generous, or I'll do more of what's meaningful, or whatever. So the question always is, well, why don't you just bring those more into your life now? Because, you might die. That's true. And statistically, the number of people who retire and, don't make it many years, or you get ill. But even if we're not talking about retirement, because this isn't a podcast about retirement, it's about things all of us do. We may die, right? Or we may not die, but then we've still spent decades of our lives not doing what brought us alive, which might be charity stuff or helping people, or I don't know what, expressing certain facets. So why not do it now would be always a question. And you can still pay attention to your number. You just don't assume the number means you can't do all the things you want to do or bring the qualities, express the qualities now. That's the trap. That's the future payoff that sort of never really arrives for us.
And I guess the next question that I've got is, so what steps or what practical steps would you take to sort of disentangle this idea of, I've got to sort the money out first? And I guess the second question is, like you said, it's easy for us to say, and wouldn't it be lovely, sort out your life path, and then there's people that are struggling. Like you said, we're not talking as a couple of privileged blokes, recording a podcast about money and life, and it might seem, well, that's easy for you to say, to focus on your life path. Is it as easy as you say it is? Yeah, actually,
I haven't said it's easy, and that's really good that you say that. It's not easy.
Okay.
But the difficulty, I would suggest, is about our consciousness and our intention and our psychology, not about the number, right? So it's good that you say it. I am not saying it's easy to do this, because we live in a society that, in my view, has a totally distorted, unhealthy, and fairly insane relationship to money. And I would say that insanity and distortion goes all the way up to policymakers, finances, because we think the number carries all of these qualities, and we don't see that in the end, these are human qualities, right? So it's not easy, A, because we live in a world that's kind of hypnotized or distorted, and B, because the work is kind of inner work, or how we think psychologically. So yeah, I wouldn't want anyone to think this is like some wishy-washy new age garbage. It's not. It's challenging. But what we are saying is, because in the end, these human experiences aren't and can never be in the number itself, however much it looks, or at least ask people to think about that, then it means whatever our number, whether it's high or low, actually we have more possibility or more agency than we realize to start to transform our experiences. So let me give an example. One of the things that happens if I'm really struggling for money, and again, it's very important you ask this question. We're not being stupid about that. We're not saying it's immensely stressful not to pay bills or not to be able to afford enough food, right? We're not saying that. And that can be a very practically challenging and upsetting series of experiences. And again, we may dive into that a lot more. And we won't get into politics right now. We know all humans in different ways at different times for whatever reason, meet with very challenging testing circumstances. Some people get very sick, some people struggle to pay bills, some people have tremendous mental illness or upset even though they're financially okay, right? Humans struggle. They do. We all do. If I'm struggling with the number and we're not making light of that, I still have more capacity than I might realize to realize the number isn't the thing that, for example, could create beauty or could create connection or could even create security. Now, it might be hard to see that because, of course, I live in a bloody society where everyone says money is what buys you, this, that, and the other, and you feel good and you feel happy. And then the trap then is if I don't have money, I might automatically assume, well, I'm tired and I'm stressed, and those experiences are not available to me because my number's low. Do you see what I mean? So I'm still making the same entanglement, but instead of chasing my pension, and when I've got my pension, then I get to have fun, I can think, well, it's all right for some, but life's shit because I've got no money, right? Now, without ignoring those challenges, the question is, well, if I can have connection or beauty or fun or appreciation or even freedom, whatever my number, then if I really see that, and it is true, there might be something I could do that's relatively small or doesn't create money, or just, the way I choose to set up the dinner table, or I might light a candle, or I might, who knows what. There are many things people do, and there are many things people do in cultures around the world where money is very low, but they still feel they come together in community, that there is joy, there is love, there is support, there is humor, okay? So it's very important we're not romanticizing poverty, but we're also not following the money story, which could further disempower people with no money, because as well as having the practical challenges, if I think all the potential and possibility for anything good or fun is in the number, then I don't see the possibility that I could have it here and now. And a reflection there, and our culture is not helpful. We have a very superficial, materialistic, numbers-focused society, but it's also an insane society. So one opportunity is, what might we do that requires no money at all, in this moment here, just to bring a bit more of the qualities we really want into this moment? And one model could be, what do certain other cultures around the world and historically already know about how you can bring in soul and richness and appreciation and many of the things that we want that are nothing to do with money? So how does that sound? Because it's a very important topic.
Yeah, I think it's spot on, and it takes a quietened down mind to be able to say, yeah, not trivializing the plight of others, or the money problems, i.e. the lack of money, which is a problem. So we're not saying that that there isn't a problem there, but it doesn't come at the expense of the ability to have those experiences. And so both can be held in the same space, and it's not an either or. And when you were saying that, I was just like, and you've mentioned this word, insane society. And the fact is that, I mean, there would have been disparity between those with money, those without money, and the quality of life that people would have has always been different, because there's never been a universal where everyone's sort of lived. But I think now with social media and the comparisons that take place, right in front of you, that I think it becomes that much harder. Previously, I think communities that maybe had less money would have probably been grouped together and would have enjoyed and leaned on each other a lot more, and would have approached the life path in a way where it allowed that fostering of all of those good experiences. Whereas now we're fragmented, but we're also looking into the lives of others that appear to have more.
We have this ridiculous, we have Instagram and celebrity culture and social media, and we have this absolutely absurd, incredibly superficial materialistic celebrity culture, whatever you call it. Now, I'm aware we're coming towards the end of our time, so I think that might be a topic to dive into. So yeah, I think we really live in a time where the money path and a whole load of unconscious, deeply confused, unhelpful views and emotions all get bundled in with that. That's what's hard, right? The hard thing is spotting that and really taking the time, if you're listening to this, to question that. And really, as we've done many times in this course, look to your own experience. When have I felt alive, free, creative, joyful, powerful? And how much is it to do with a number or any of that stuff? The hard thing is to kind of stand away from the mad crowd and see that. So the one thing I'd say around not having money is one of the big entanglements is something about power and agency, right? In other words, I might think, well, my number's very low, I don't have money, and only with money do I get power, agency, creativity, to reshape my life or to make choices. It can really feel like that. And I understand that. But if we can see, no, if there's choice or creativity or agency, it's in me. Might not seem like it, might not seem like that's what my culture is, but in the end, I get to choose, how we have dinner, what we do today. Even if we have no money, we can set something up, we can have a certain attitude, we can try something. Then I've got a lot more possibility to actually reshape things than I realize. So maybe that sounds very big and a little provocative, but again, none of the qualities in the end are in the number, and that's the money path. So the question really, maybe the takeaway for anybody listening to this might be something like this. Regardless of my money situation, what is one thing I know that when I'm doing it, it brings me alive, gives me some sense of aliveness, vitality, or some of the things I want from life: connection, beauty, happiness, right? What is one thing I know gives me that experience? And how do I bring more of that into my life next week? And I would suggest, if possible, that it's not a thing I consume or have to pay for. So it might be a way I am with my friends, or a way we are together, or just time outdoors, or just one thing, or sitting and reading a book, or listening to beautiful music, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be something that I have to buy and consume, because that's part of the kind of crazy mirage of the modern money path. How did that sound?
I think it's so important to be able to just notice these things that allow us to have those experiences. Like you said, a simple thing for me just, is playing board games with my kids.
Right.
And it's only when I sit back and I think, oh, that was really enjoyable. The connection, the not looking at our screens for an hour and just getting lost in a game, and the competitiveness or the camaraderie. And actually you just think, well, yeah, that's got nothing to do with money. And yet so free and accessible at any point, really. You just have to put aside the time and get everyone together. And yeah, it's not tied up with a number that's big or small. The number is irrelevant. And I think, just going back, most people that I assume that are listening to this are at a place in their life where they're not struggling to put food on the table.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. So I want our conversations, as far as possible, to kind of respect and be open to anyone with any current set of money numbers. I would want to listen to this and at least be curious that this is for you.
Yeah.
And there is stuff, obviously, exactly how you work with it and the exact sort of entanglements are different for different people. But I believe very strongly, after nearly 20 years of doing this work, that we are talking about something universal. It just shows up differently for different people. I would hope that. But sorry I interrupted you, but
No,
I think that was important. So I don't know who will listen to this.
Yeah, the only reason why I was saying that is just it's just when you look at sort of demographics of general podcast consumption, and all of that data suggests that if you're having to work sort of 16 hours a day to make ends meet, you're probably not tuning into, and that's just a generic. So I'm just making the sort of assumption, that it's people that are not struggling to work 3 jobs, put food on the table, and not going to be sitting listening to us more than likely. And so that invitation to just and there's still going to be money struggles, and that's going to be part of what we're trying to help people to sort of bring a perspective on this, which is sit up and take notice of these things. And like you said, if you can bring more of them into your life, that's a massive win.
Bring more life into your life. Many of us are focused on bringing more money into our life because we believe and have been told, if I bring more money into my life, then I get more life. Well, maybe not, but why not cut out the middleman and at least consider in the next week, how do I bring more life into my life, whatever that means for you, with and without money? Right, that would be a great takeaway for people.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah.
All right, Tim.
Thanks, Shabbar.
I'll see you next time.
That's great. Yeah, see you soon. Bye-bye.